Udlukut Tungasugit, Mr. Okalik. Thank you so much for being here with us today and for your willingness to answer our questions. I'd love for you to talk about the importance of transferring power and control over land and natural resources from the Canadian federal government to the local government of Nunavut in a way that reflects Inuit values, and perhaps how the conversation and the negotiations surrounding the process of devolution have changed since you were Premier of Nunavut, and what you see as the way forward when a new government is elected. I want to thank you first and for inviting me to take part in your symposium today. When I was leading the government, I asked for equal treatment like any Canadian, and that meant having the same power as any government in the country. Like we have a federation of provinces, and I want to be treated no different. We have a long enough history of colonialism in our country, and we want to part from that. So if we look at the provinces today, they have control and ownership of their resources, 100%. And they get to collect the royalties, 100%. And they get to manage those resources. We want the same treatment possible. So one of the premises of doing that is that once you get control and you make your own decisions, you actually bear the fruits of those decisions. So that's what we wanted. To date, we still haven't made much progress, unfortunately. The new federal government says that Aboriginal people will be treated as equals. I haven't seen that yet. So if we look at the Federation, the biggest part of the potential benefits for Nunavut is in the offshore, in internal waters to Canada. And if you look at the history of our country, those internal waters belong to the province. So that's where we have continuing differences with our national government. If we are able to bear the fruits of those internal waters, we can potentially be self-sufficient. That's where devolution has real potential for our territory. Not so much in the terrestrial part where there's no real potential royalties. There's a lot of minerals, but as you know, in mineral development, it's very labor intensive. So there's limited potential for royalties flowing to the local government. So that's where it's an ongoing issue for us. Thank you for that answer. And then I had one other question going back a little further in time to when you were helping to negotiate the land claims agreement before Nunavut had its independence. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of using Inuktitut to define key terms in legal agreements, and also the importance of training lawyers and judges who speak that language? And then any other thoughts about the negotiation process?
One part that I forgot about the benefits of devolution with the inland waters is that there's an ongoing dispute on our high Arctic islands, which are said to be internal waters to Canada. By transferring those inland waters to Nunavut, Canada, in fact, will be asserting clear sovereignty to those waters. We'll be supporting that decision. And as traditional occupants of those waters and lands, we can only support our national government in securing our borders, which will benefit Canada and the US in particular. So that's one part I neglected to mention. When I was taking part in the negotiations, I was a very young man, I must say. And I was very assertive of trying to make sure that we learned from past agreements. That's where I got to know Makivik quite well. I had very regular meetings about their experience in negotiations, and we were very supported. They supported us 100% in moving forward and coming up with stronger agreements. So we came up with models from Makivik and the Inuvialuit about jointly managing the resources and asserting our traditional ways in those bodies. So it was very helpful in learning about, it gave me a chance to learn more about myself, for example, about my history. And it gave me strength and the resolve to continue on with higher education, for example. So it gave me tools to move forward. And when it came to forming the government, I was pretty comfortable with working with other governments, so it made it easier. And the fact we got Nunavut through the land claim agreement, and it gave us the tools to manage our own affairs. And we have ongoing issues, but they'll take time. But we now have the tools to make local decisions as Inuit, and that's the biggest benefit that I've seen to date. And people often ask, how can you meld the two as strengthening your culture at the same time meeting the modern day challenges? And they came up with that. I came up with my own question on that with my local elder when I was contemplating my own future. Even though I'm educated, I was seen as too far to the non-Inuit ways in some ways. So I asked my elder, what do I do now? And the most interesting answer that I got from my late elder was, you are an Inuk, and first and foremost, you are an Inuk. But with your education, you come up with questions and points of view that we never really think about. So that gave me renewed energy to continue my work. And it really pointed out that we need to continue on and continue to educate and move forward with more Inuit everywhere so that we can pursue our dreams and our goals.
Kuyanamik.
Hilal.
Kuyanamik and Udlukut. I'm actually really interested in that connection between education and self-determination. And reading through some of the work that you did as Premier and as a legislative member, and looking at other organizations and governments and communities, one thing that I've noticed is that it seems like some folks pursue a path in education that is working within the existing school system to make changes and increase, for example, in Nunavut, increase the use of Inuktitut, increase the number of Inuit teachers that are in the classroom, whereas others pursue an approach that is working outside of that system a little bit more with things like camps on the land and cultural programs and community projects. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the differences between those two approaches and what the opportunities and challenges are with both.
Yes, trying to retain our cultural ways is a real challenge today, but at the same time it has real potential for growth and benefits for the whole territory. As Inuit, we're taught to not carry the burden of yesterday, to move forward and to not carry any anger and to heal. That's a very positive thing. That I've been a benefactor of that practice. Well, I was a very angry young man in my younger life, but over time, with a lot of support from my own family and elders, I learned to heal and move forward and use that to make sure that my future will be better. I wouldn't have thought that that was possible because I was educated in the classroom and I was removed from the traditional ways, for example. But with very wise words from my late mother, for example, she told me, I don't want to worry about your future. The jobs of tomorrow are with education. You need to get educated so that you can have a bright future ahead of you. Even though she passed on, I carried those words with me and was able to succeed in getting my law degree and practicing law. And
So there's potential for both. But I must say, we've been harmed a lot. So it will take time. Not all of us are the same. We need help in moving forward, but we need support first and foremost in getting there. So Okalik, for example, is one example of moving to more of our culture. But I must say there's some very good work happening now with Okalik, which is in the same community of Clyde River, which are focusing traditional healing and moving forward and carrying on in a healthier way. And I think we're going in that direction. And I'm very encouraged by the good work that's happening. But it will take a bit of time, and I think we'll become a very healthier, stronger people as a result.
Thank you for sharing about those projects. Thinking broadly about, it's interesting you brought up the idea of healing as well in connection with education. So could you talk a little bit more about how you see local control of education, of healing, connecting with building capacity and energy towards those goals of self-determination?
I must say that once you heal, there's no limit. There seems to be no barrier to moving forward. In our cultural way, you're taught never to carry all the negative stuff, just to release it and move forward. And I think that's something that can have a very positive role for overall society. The structures that have been put in place prevent you in some ways moving forward. Like if you're have to go to court, for example, it will take a very long time for it to be dispensed with. So that adds to the strain and the stress for the overall family unit. So we need to move forward in removing some of those barriers. So that will take time. But I think what we are taught is that you can be a very effective member of your family, not just in the wage economy, but you can also support your family by going hunting, for example, going fishing, and contributing to your family in a very healthy way. So when you move forward, it doesn't necessarily have to be through education. It can be through a very traditional way of supporting your family. So there's opportunities for both and real potential in our own resources in our territory.
Briefly, just to wrap this up, what do you think Nunavut can learn from the example of other Indigenous groups around the Arctic and the world as you help to secure better representation of Indigenous values and ways in the national and international stages?
We often point to Kalatit Nunat, which is a bright light for all of us in the Inuit land, because they've moved a long ways and they pretty much have the destiny in their hands. So that's a very bright light to aspire to as Inuit. So it's a challenge for us in Nunavut because we have many issues and it will take us a while to get there. And we have to do whatever we can to improve our own local standing. Right now, Inuit in Nunavut are still at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder, and we need to get better and move forward and advance in all those sectors. And that will take a little bit of time, but there's some, as I said, there's some very good work happening, and we need to increase that capacity throughout Nunavut for us to move forward in a very rapid way.
Kuanamik, Paul.
Ilali, Kuyanamik Tokedi.
Ilali.